Welcome back. You're with us on News9 Live. I'm Shweta Kothari. It's not just the unchecked industrial development that is a cause of concern when it comes to pollution, when it comes to natural disaster and global warming, but also man-made wars. Scientists estimate that planet warning emissions generated during the first 2 months of the war in Gaza were greater than the annual carbon footprint of more than 20 of the world's most climate vulnerable nations. As we brace for the impact of climate change, we now know that there is a war, in fact 2 wars now, contributing to climate change and probably has a larger carbon footprint than previously thought. The link between climate change and war was a running theme back at COP28, highlighting how many countries suffer from both deadly conflict and environmental disasters simultaneously. Another issue discussed was how climate change affects vulnerable countries. For now, let's take a look at the carbon footprint caused by the 2 running conflicts and their impact on climate change. The vast majority of the 281 metric tons of carbon dioxide is estimated to have been generated in the first 60 days following the October 7 attack by Hamas and can be attributed to Israel's aerial bombardment and ground invasion of Gaza. The climate cost of the first 60 days of Israel's military response was equivalent to burning of at least 150,000 tons of coal. This includes CO2 from aircraft mission, tanks and fuels from other vehicles, as well as emissions generated by making and exploding of bombs, artilleries and rockets. It does not include other planet-warming gases such as methane, and almost half of the total CO2 emissions were down to US cargo planes flying military supplies to Israel. Hamas rockets fired into Israel during the same period also generated about 713 tons of CO2, which is equivalent to approximately 300 tons of coal. Meanwhile, the rebuilding of 100,000 buildings will generate 30 million metric tons of greenhouse gases. Russia's invasion of Ukraine too, which was launched in February last year, accounts for about 150 million tons of carbon dioxide emission. The estimate is for 18 months of the war only. The fighting has resulted in pollution of air, soil, water resources. 25% of the emissions are due to burning fossil fuel by Russian and Ukrainian armies, and 15% is due to fires at the front line. These are just the initial numbers and rough estimates. They do not include the cost to human life, the displacement of people, and the resultant cost in rebuilding some of these geographies. What it does include is the number of carbon emission that these wars have now caused. Harjeet Singh continues to be with us. Mr. Singh, before we went into break, we were talking about how some of it is controlled, can be controlled by the way of fossil fuel emission. These are easy targets, as opposed to the ongoing war, sir, which is now known to be causing more global warming, more emissions than 20 most vulnerable countries in the world.
Shweta, first of all, let me thank you for putting a spotlight on this very important topic. The irony is that military emissions are not even counted as part of the UN Climate Change Convention or Paris Agreement in 2015. That's the biggest irony we should be talking about. And if we look at the emissions that are linked to conflict or militaries, it's more than 5% of total global emissions. But I can tell you this is as per the data, but countries continue to hide the true scale. So it's way beyond the current estimate, and the ongoing wars are making it worse. And of course, its impact on people, their lives, their human rights, and the kind of violations that are happening, are unspeakable. But then the emissions that are being caused by military right now are going to push us way beyond the target of staying below 1.5 degree, which means the impacts that we are going to see because of rising temperature are going to be far, far worse. So we are accelerating climate change, and it's going to be impacting the same vulnerable communities who are not responsible for either the climate crisis or these wars. So the reality is there are winners and losers. So there are people who are making money or winning wars or pursuing their political agenda, but there is a large number of people who are facing the impact of these wars and climate change.
Right? Whosoever wins, I think we lose collectively as humanity when it comes to these wars. Before I let you go, Mr. Singh, I think an important conversation will be whether Conference of Parties, which is now likely to happen in December this year in Baku, will take note of the kind of emissions some of these active wars have now caused in the past 2 to 3 years.
Well, not officially, but as civil society, as activists, we are pushing for that. In fact, at the last COP28, now there was a conversation happening with NATO, and we in media, we are working with our partners in the West to do this kind of calculation. Many reports are coming out, and we want a transparent way of counting these emissions so that we can tell the world the impact of these wars, not only on human lives and the kind of destruction it's causing, but also intensifying climate change. So we are going to continue to make efforts. It's not as part of the official process. And that's why we need more awareness through media programs like yours so that people are aware and we are able to put pressure on governments to take that into account and make it part of the global system.
All right, Harjeet Singh, thank you very much, sir, for taking time out for joining us this evening. This is an important story. It's an ongoing story of climate change, its impact not just felt here in the national capital, where the temperatures soared to a whopping 52 degrees Celsius in the afternoon, followed by a shower of rain towards the evening. Basically, climatic conditions cannot be justified in this part of the year, in this part of the country at this point in time. Talking about the after effects of course, the CO2 emissions and the adverse climate changes that this country and the world is witnessing at this point. We'll come back to it on later part of the show after this very short break. Stay tuned.